Hello everyone, this video is in our Great Engine game series and it's done to celebrate the victory of Komodo Dragon in the TCEC Swiss 2 by a full point. Very well deserved victory. I realised that I'd actually given a lot more games of Stockfish and Leela than Komodo, so I thought I should rectify this with one or maybe even two videos about the game pair between Komodo Dragon and Berserk, which was very, very interesting indeed. A very interesting line of the King's Indian, and both engines played in a very interesting fashion. So it started with d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and now f3, one of my favourite ways to meet the Grunfeld. In actual fact, the idea is that after d5, we just play c takes d5, knight takes d5, e4. And black doesn't have this knight takes c3 idea, which well, allows black to develop very quickly and also gives black a couple of pawn targets along the a1 h8 diagonal. After knight b6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3. It's quite a sharp line, and yeah, I've played this quite a lot with very good results. I mean, black's looked for a number of interesting lines. You can just transpose back into a King's Indian, but Grunfeld players are often a little bit loath to do that. So there have been a few interesting ideas. Knight c6 is one of them. e5 has been played as well, and knight h5 is another interesting one. Actually just intending to play e5 and then queen h4 check. So e4, e5, just again opening the lineup of queen h4 check, and now a typical way for white to deal with this in the Samisch. The bishop goes to e3 and queen h4 can be met by bishop f2. Black doesn't really want to take on d4, we just take on d4, attack the rook on h8. So bishop g7, and now yeah, white's got a number of possibilities. Knight e2 is quite common, but d5 is a very natural move as well, just closing the centre, and we're back actually into some really old-fashioned classical Samisch King's Indians here, which in principle should be slightly better for white. This closed centre and this solid structure, which is very well placed to deal with an f5 from black, and then the advantage on the queen side, which can give you easy queenside pawn advance with c5. That should generally be quite nice for white. I mean, there have been many classic games, particularly from Gligerich, in this sort of position. So knight e2, f5, knight bc3, castles, queen d2, and now an interesting point really. Black has to decide what to do. Are you going to keep the centre open? Just remember though that e takes f5, g takes f5, and then g4. It's always the typical idea as long as the centre is open, and you just try and clear the king side of pawns and just create lots of attacking lines towards the king. Or do you want to close the centre and close the king side and try and expand there? So what Berserk does with f4, I'm not super happy with it. If you look at what Stockfish did in a game I ran against Revenge on 14 threads, then Stockfish just kept the centre open and played like this. I mean, g4, this was very dangerous for black. This was quite, the g file is open. This knight is aiming for f5 or for e4 as well. It did look very, very dangerous indeed. But yeah, somehow Stockfish survived and actually even won this game with black, but still, I mean, it looked pretty dangerous indeed. F4 was played, bishop to g1, just to get out of the way. It's not necessarily a plan you'd expect from black, but this is anticipating the plan of bishop f6 to h4. So white doesn't want to have to exchange off the dark squared bishops. I mean, it's a slightly odd square blocking in the rook on h1, but on the other hand, it's a sort of it's a piece that's very easy to move later. You could very easily imagine playing bishop f2 later, and okay, you've wasted a tempo, but it's a block position, so it doesn't really make that much difference. So after knight d7, castles, bishop f6 played, but this was quite a common plan from my engine. So yeah. king b1 from Komodo, and bishop h4. This idea, I mean, really just trying to pin down the white king side, the white king side. Now, I had a lot of games with this between Stockfish and Koivisto, 7.9 on my 94 thread machine, and Stockfish made a pretty good score here. Stockfish was just actually playing a4 and just going for a queenside attack. Actually just saying, you know, these pieces here on the king side, completely useless. I'm just going to attack on the queen side. And, you know, it was not stupid at all. Koivisto brought the bishop back to e7, b4, b5, a6. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think that white could break through, but somehow Stockfish did. It reminds me very much of this game against Leela in the late stages of the season 21 Sufi, and it was a book choice by Jeroen, and yeah, you know, it just somehow it looked all blocked, but Stockfish broke through, and it was very similar in this game. But in general, you know, I mean, Stockfish also tried other plans. I mean, it also played knight c1 in this position, knight c1 this position, and played a little bit more slowly, like this, you know, but it made a very big score. So, you know, a slow plan is not bad at all, but Komodo Dragon plays a really beautiful, I have to say, and sharp plan. I really like this. It played g3 straight away, challenging these pieces. Now, f takes g3, h takes g3. If you take the piece, takes, then yeah, this led to a pretty convincing win from Stockfish against Koivisto. Yeah, I mean, you know, the bishop's very powerful. You've got this queen side edge, and black's got an extra pawn, but, you know, this extra pawn is on the king side. It's not really going to be moving, and Stockfish just yeah, just had a very easy way through. Reminds me a little bit of an AlphaZero Stockfish 8 game. This type of thing. You know, the centre's cleared of pawns. The bishops get involved in the attack, and then it's all too much. You know, and rook f8, rook h1, queen e7, queen g1, really powerful. The queen's coming round to d4 now, attacking the knight on e5. It's just really bad for black. So so bishop g5 played, and then here, you know, Komodo just carried on through, and this is something that Komodo does really well. I mean, sometimes as an engine, I think its play it's less, you know, beautifully tactical than Stockfish's attacking play, and it looks less, sometimes a little bit less smooth than Leader's best positional play. But it does have a fantastic feel for the initiative, you know, and this plan with g3, you know, which has the following idea in it. It wasn't you know, looked at all by Stockfish. It was really a different Komodo idea, you know, and that's really its strength. It does play, does find some different things to Stockfish and Leela, which is why it's so interesting to have as an engine for analysing with, and also as an engine for playing engine games with, simply because it's just a little bit different. And I do wonder, you know, whether you know, the teams of Magnus and Jan Nepomniachtchi, you know, whether they've cottoned onto this, and whether they use Komodo as well, you know, regularly in their games. I think it could deliver something a little bit extra, to be honest. f4 was played. E takes f4. Rook takes h5. This is the idea. Takes, g takes f4, bishop h6. Now, it's not actually incredibly obvious that this is so great for white. Obviously, lovely pawns. These have been damaged as well. The king has been opened. But you're not really close to the black position. But, yeah, I mean, Komodo finds just a really beautiful way of entering with its pieces. You know, and it plays bishop h3 check and bishop e6 check. Black doesn't really want to put the king in the corner. We'll go, you know, just knight d4 to f5. In actual fact, I mean, this is the, you know, the key point of this bishop e6. It's stopping the bishop, the light square bishop, from getting active, so that this idea is going to be really dangerous, targeting this bishop on h6. And of course, if we exchange off our knight for the dark squared bishop, then this bishop really comes into it, comes into d4. it's one of those one of those things that you often see with these really strong engines that the consequences of what they're doing are not really visible in the immediate position, but there's a whole chain of events that's sort of almost inevitable, that started out by some exchange sacrifice like rook takes h5, and then the result of that inevitable chain of events, that you understand, and there you can see that it's really good. So takes knight d4, knight coming into f5, knight g4. So Berserk really fighting back very resourcefully, trying to get some squares for its pieces. And what really amazes me in these next things is how many pawns Komodo can afford to lose, and still emerge with a much better position. Knight d5 is very nice. I mean, it's attacking c7, but it's actually also threatening something else, which is after c6 is actually to go e7, and after rook f7 you go knight c7, and then you've distracted the rook from the 8th rank. So the knight is actually safe, and so if you want to pick it up, you're going to have to waste time with that, and that gives white plenty of time to attack. And I mean, what you notice in all these assessments, you could sort of forget it really, but Komodo's already plus 2.5 or something like that, but it's 2 pawns down. And even here it's 1 pawn down. There's stuff that I'd be assessing as interesting compensation for black, and it's already saying completely winning. Here, of course, because there's a very simple tactic to pick up material, but it's very striking. It really is very striking. After knight d5, black played bishop g5, and then black gained some white gained some material back. So this position, what is it? It's equal material. Black's king is kind of open. White's king is a lot safer, but it's not so bad. I mean, you've got this double pawn on h5, of course, but it's supporting a knight on g4. I think the key thing is that White's got this fantastic square on f5 for the knight, which really keeps everything together. I mean, it shields the e4 pawn. The knight can take on d6, or the rook can take on d6. I mean, the knight on f5 also attacks squares like g7, h6, e7, close to the black king. That this confers an advantage that's about plus 2.5 for Komodo. That is the incredible thing. That's the amazing thing that engines really, that really get you about engines nowadays. That their assessments are so good and so clear so early. But I mean, certainly it's you can understand it. There was a great game which I have to show to you. Where was it? It was here. This one indeed. Coming up. So Queen c2 was what Komodo played, but a3 was what a lot of my engines wanted to play. Just get the king out to a2, get the king out of this diagonal. Again, a very sensible move here. Probably not the best. I mean, my hardware isn't as powerful as at the TCEC, but it got a lovely game all the same. Knight e3, takes, queen h2, takes, queen e6, queen h5. So equal material, and as I said, dragon is plus 2.5 or something. What is the problem? Weak king, weak pawns actually, and they always say that in major piece endings, safety of the king is a huge factor, and that seems to be factored into to Komodo's evaluation here. So after b6, king a1, rook f8. What really impressed me here was, it was simply that we're equal in material here, and yet Komodo's evaluation is so high. Here, just giving away a pawn, just like this. Rook g1, king f7, queen f3, but you just get some beautiful tactics. I mean, obviously Komodo's seen in advance how it can coordinate its pieces beautifully, but the next few moves are amazing. It's queen h1, AlphaZero-ish, attacking h7, but also threatening rook c1. I mean, we're really coming from both sides here. And after queen e6, well, we had the king side, the queen side, and now this move e5 just to try and break open the black king. And d5, queen e1, king e8, queen e2. I mean, I wouldn't tell you that this position is so much better for white. But it's one of those never-ending attacks, you know, where yeah, with superb calculation you can see just further and further ahead that the king never escapes. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend this at home somehow. But this led to a win in Dragon against Revenge on my 7-core machine. So a little bit of a weaker machine, but still very strong. So yeah, I mean, these, you know, just amazing games, really. You know, I mean, and not completely easy to, you know, to understand every detail of them. But I don't think you need to, really. I mean, I think the, you know, the general evaluation is something you just need to remember in your head. And if you get something in the game, that should hopefully give you courage. If you happen to be, you know, a pawn down in a major piece ending, but the opponent's king is unsafe. Queen c2. This was, you know, just very safe from Komodo. Just played a3, king a2, same plan, just slightly different idea there. Queen a4, bishop h2, knight f5, giving up this pawn, but of course remaining with the weak pawn on b7 and the weak pawn on d6. And yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, frankly, I will admit, you know, I'm surprised at how well this is assessed by Komodo, but simply, you know, black does seem powerless. You know, when you look at the game, white just puts its pieces into fantastic squares, and black's pieces get worse and worse. And you know, one of the simple plans that white's got is to come in and grab these pawns, and then just be multiple pawns up. This knight comes to f5. We mentioned before, very strong square for the knight, hitting e7, h6, g7. Queen e8, queen a6, again hitting these pawns, knight c6, bishop c3, and yeah, I mean yeah, you know, the white pieces are beautiful here. Queen e4 played, a pawn drops, but black doesn't seem to worry here, and yeah, the threat on this knight on c6 is very unpleasant. I mean, if knight d8, we've got ideas like queen to d7 simply, you know, and we've got mate on g7. So it's really, really very dangerous for black here. In fact, almost hopeless. And here black took on f5 and sacked the exchange. A6, queen d5, takes. But well, this was trivial for Komodo. This d pawn is just running. We cut the king off with rook e5, and Bob's your uncle, really. Yeah, I mean, it's a really beautiful game, and as I said, I think it shows the quality that Komodo has got. I think probably maybe even more than you know, the other top engines, Stockfish and Leela, and that's somehow this yeah, this feel for the sudden initiative somehow, you know, and these moves like g3 and fitting together with an exchange sacrifice, and then fitting together with this sort of infiltration idea, where you know, the bishop basically shields entry squares for the knight. I mean, I really find this very typical Komodo, and I think it does it, you know, even better than the other engines. So yeah, great, you know, and it just makes a very, you know, aggressive attacking style for Komodo, and you know, from that point of view, you know, in a tournament like the Swiss, it seemed to be just stronger than Leela and Stockfish, putting away the weaker opponents, you know, as the 2-0 shutout of slow chess showed. So really, yeah, very, very impressive, this game, and I'll probably also look at the reverse, the game Berserk Komodo, because that was also a humdinger of a game, really, and you know, Komodo came also relatively close there to getting a double kill against a very strong engine, Berserk. So okay, there we are. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you do like it, why not give it a like, or even subscribe to the channel, or even take a look at The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, my new book, which has just come out, which has masses of engine stuff like this. But otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching the video, and hopefully see you at our next video.